Stephanie Vaquer won the women's Money in the Bank qualifying match on this week's edition of WWE Raw, and now she is the final participant in the Money in the Bank ladder match in Los Angeles. It will be Stephanie Vaquer taking on Rhea Ripley, Roxanne Perez, Alexa Bliss, Naomi, and Guilia. That is your lineup for the women's Money in the Bank match with everything on the line. The winner gets a potential cash-in opportunity to become a world champion of their choosing on any brand. And so it's quite a setup for whoever wins this match, but it's also telling us a lot about the future of the WWE women's division and how really some of these recent moves that WWE has made could very well change everything about how the women's division will look moving forward. And if you really think about it, back in the day, if you looked at some of the things that Triple H did the best in terms of when he was in charge of NXT, it was all about elevating the women's division, right? We remember the Four Horsewomen and their ability to go out, put on matches that could headline shows at the time, and then that continued to carry over into the main roster once you had kind of those big four of Bayley, Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks. Once they all kind of elevated to the main roster, then that carried over. And then that pipeline has continued to grow throughout this iteration of NXT. Sure, along the way, there have been, questionable booking decisions and all of that stuff. You can criticize certain things along the way, just as you can kind of in any of this. But when you look at it from just the state of the women's division, and you sort of see where things are now, and looking at, again, this iteration of NXT, I mean, it's very clear now that you're looking at a women's division that sort of feels like it's in that next evolution of, I guess, pun intended, since Evolution's coming up a month from now in Atlanta, Georgia. But it is something where now they are at a point where I think the women's division is stacked to where they can go back to doing an Evolution type show. They can now put the top tier women's superstars in that position to where they are headlining PLEs. And not to say that that hasn't been the case for the last little bit, but I think you could certainly argue that right now, in terms of the depth, this is the most depth that the WWE women's roster has had in quite a while, because when you think about, like I said, Stephanie Vaquer comes up, she wins the qualifier right away. Giulia's already won a qualifier. Roxanne Perez. These are all recent call-ups from NXT, and now they are being put in this position with three veterans in Rhea Ripley, Alexa Bliss, and Naomi. We'll make our predictions tomorrow on the channel as to who I think is going to win that match, because I think it could very well be wide open as to the possibilities of who's going to win. But my prediction may surprise you a little bit. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the video tomorrow looking at our full Money in the Bank predictions. But when you think about just the overall ascension of those three coming up from NXT, Vaquer, I think you could argue, has had one of the best initial rookie years in WWE history. I mean, you can start to put her up there. She's a double champion in NXT. Now she comes out, she stars on the main roster after WrestleMania. She gets a couple appearances as the NXT champion. And now, in her first match, officially as part of the Raw roster, they bring her up. She wins a qualifier that involves Liv Morgan and Ivy Nile. Ivy Nile, I think, has kind of been underrated. She's been a pretty regular, I think, solid performer on the WWE main roster for a while now, ever since being part of this whole stuff with Chad Gable. Liv Morgan, we know, has ascended into a top superstar. I mean, we're talking one of the biggest stars in the company. She's out doing, potential Oscar-worthy films now and all this other stuff. That's where Liv Morgan's at. But with Vaquer, they're clearly bringing her up, and you saw the highlight package they did on Raw, pushing her as someone who is supposed to be looked at as a top-level superstar. Not just a top-level superstar in the women's division, a top-level superstar, period, in the company. And you guys know, I said it, and with the live stream we did on the Raw after WrestleMania, I think it was, where I said, I think when you look at the entire body of work here, I think Stephanie Vaquer is one of the best they've ever had in WWE history in terms of the complete package that she brings to the table, the presentation, obviously the in-ring ability, and all of that. She has it. Whatever you want to identify it as, that is what she has, and that's why they're pushing her as such into this Money in the Bank match. But beyond that, you look at the current state of the NXT roster and other call-ups that seem to be likely, if not now, in the near future. Jordan Grace, who Stephanie Vaquer faced at Battleground, was someone that we have seen before, right? In terms of her Royal Rumble appearances, she had impressed in the Royal Rumble these past couple years, and now we know as officially a part of the WWE roster now instead of just being in TNA, she is someone that they have also put in a starring role in NXT. Those two had a great match at Battleground, and it does seem like, according to reports, that Jordynne Grace is going to be moving on up, potentially to SmackDown here very soon. And now in a position where, all right, you got another maybe potential kind of cornerstone of the roster being brought up now from NXT to WWE main roster. And so she's someone very accomplished. The person you saw on the thumbnail, Mariah May. We know there have been plenty of rumors out there about the future of Mariah May, even if you don't watch AEW. I would highly suggest you go watch highlights of Mariah May because she's someone else. You want to talk about how Stephanie Vaquer has had a great first year in WWE. Mariah May had an unbelievable run in AEW with her feud with Toni Storm, and just what she did from day one to her final appearance in the company. She was someone else who elevated her stardom to a level that now she's probably headed to WWE. And if that's the case, whether it's in NXT to start off with, whether it's to the WWE main roster, either way, she's someone else that you're positioning as a future top-level superstar, not just saying a top women's star, a superstar in the company. It's some of the same things we've said about other talents on the roster, right? Rhea Ripley, it speaks for herself. I mentioned Liv, Bianca Belair. Like, you just keep going down the line. These are all people. Tiffany Stratton has certainly been seen as someone like that, who can be the face of a WWE brand for many years to come. Becky Lynch, we know, has probably been elevated to a level that no one else has before just because of the generational run that she had several years ago as the man, all of a sudden became the top star in the company. But now when you see the level of skill and just the level of talent that is within this WWE women's roster, you've got a lot more possibilities, I think, to get more of those Becky Lynch types who are going to eventually break out, if they haven't already, and be kind of the face of an entire brand or potentially one of the top faces of the entire company. And again, we've kind of seen some of these superstars be in that level before. I mean, they pushed Rhea Ripley that way. Liv Morgan, like I said, has certainly been elevated into that role. But when you look at what they're already doing with the Stephanie Vaquer, when you look at what they could do with a Mariah May, whether she comes in NXT or goes to the main roster, either way, it doesn't matter. She has it, right? She has those intangibles. And again, if you haven't watched her, go watch her. There are plenty of highlights you can find on YouTube or anywhere else of Mariah May and see what she's going to bring to WWE if, in fact, that is where this is headed. And there are so many other talents, right? I mean, again, Roxanne, she's already been thrust into a role in Judgment Day, a very prominent role that it looks like eventually is going to culminate in a feud with Liv Morgan. So there's plenty of trust in Roxanne to be in a position where now they are so confident in her abilities that she is going to be put into a feud with one of their top stars in Liv Morgan. That's going to happen at some point based on the way they're playing this up with Dominic. And so, again, Giulia, someone that already setting her sights on the United States Championship, and Zelina Vega. And so, even if she doesn't win the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match, she's already someone you can tell they are putting plenty into, and they are trying to kind of usher in this new era for some of these newer women's superstars. You still have your veterans, like I said, the ones that can certainly carry their weight as top-tier stars in this division. But they are clearly bringing in a new crop of stars, and that's not even mentioning, as I look down my list here, and I have my list of NXT women's superstars right now. You look at some of the ones that they're going to be able to call up eventually, like a Sol Ruca, who is currently the NXT Women's North American Champion. Jada Parker, clearly someone I think that they see big things in for the future. You keep going down the line. I know I'm going to forget someone. Kalani Jordan just had a great match with Sol Ruca at Battleground. There's Lola Vice. There's Zarya. Like, there's all kinds of people that if you're watching NXT, JC Jane just became the NXT Women's Champion. All of a sudden, things get a lot more interesting now after she shocked the world and defeated Stephanie Vaquer, which we know now why that was, because they were going to quickly move her up to the main roster. And so you still got some of those talents on the NXT roster who are going to be able to kind of be in a position where now they're elevated as well. And, Jade Cargill, again, she's someone that we didn't really mention. She's not on the NXT roster, but she is someone that they see as a figure that they can put in those high-profile spots, right? And so by doing what they're doing now, by doing this to where you do have all these new, fresh faces that are about to join the main roster, or at least be put in prominent positions, let's say in an NXT, carry the brand the same way some of the previous ones have, and then they get pushed up to the main roster. But when you see this new elevation of talent, it's very clear that this approach right now, again, could change the women's division forever, because this is how they're doing it. They are making it very clear that they are putting together a division that is so stacked right now, like I said, with very good wrestling and very good just, performers, entertainers, whatever you want to say. It works right now, I think, within the WWE system and what they're trying to achieve. And to me, this is one of those things that we're going to be watching over the next year to see how this continues to progress with some of these superstars that very well, like I said, could be faces of the brand, faces of all this, and be pushed as such for a long time to come. And that's where we do start with the Stephanie Vaquer. We could be looking at that for a Mariah May when she comes in. There are plenty of other options, like I said. The core group that's already there and has been established, you know who they are. It's the ones we talk about all the time and have talked about for a while now. They're kind of your core group. But when you have some of these others that can kind of immediately start to be put in those positions, and you're seeing these women's stars, that are a little bit younger than some of your ones that have been in the WWE for many years, you're looking at ways to continue to, again, elevate them and put them in positions. And I think look no further than Stephanie Vaquer and the way they did the presentation, the highlight package, everything they did for her, making her feel like a big, big deal. Because she is. Like I said, I still think she's maybe, when all is said and done, will maybe go down as one of the best they've ever had. And so, from that standpoint, I think you're clearly seeing a shift in WWE's approach to the women's division. There is a dedicated effort to make sure that the development cycle of being able to get these women, put them in the right spots if they're coming through NXT, make sure you get everything you can in place for them to succeed, so that when they're going to the main roster, just as these, maybe big three have in Vaquer, Guilia, and Roxanne Perez, you're putting them in positions to have success and be kind of the new wave of the future. And like I said, there are plenty of other options you could turn to on the NXT level right now, whether it's still Ruka Jada Parker, could be Mariah May if she goes there, whatever. But I think it's an exciting time for the WWE Women's Division, and I think there are plenty of other, potential people out there that we could see join this division over the next year or so. That only adds to kind of that thought. It makes for an exciting thing too, because it's a lot more competitive, right? I mean, if you're one of the veterans in WWE and you kind of have your established spot, well, now there's a lot more competition when WWE is fast tracking some of these other stars from the NXT level, or again potentially fast tracking a Mariah May if she comes in and all that. So it does make for a healthy competition to be able to see who are going to be the women that stand out in this very deep and sort of stacked lineup of talent on this women's roster right now. And so that's kind of where we are with the WWE Women's Division. And I think, Vaquer winning on Monday, whether she wins the match on Saturday or not, I don't think it matters. I think it's very clear, though, the way they position her, they see her as a top-tier, top-level star. And I think that she may not be the only one that they kind of view in that manner now as they start to continue to keep building out this women's division moving forward. You guys let me know what you think. What do you think about the state of the WWE Women's Division? What do you think about Stephanie Vaquer? What do you think about Mariah May potentially coming in? What are your thoughts on what you see with the women's division right now? Do you think this is one of the most stacked WWE women's divisions we've ever seen in the company? Let me know your thoughts. Drop your comments below. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button. Money in the Bank predictions coming tomorrow. But in the meantime, you can check out my thoughts on R-Truth's WWE release, Roman Reigns potentially returning soon, all that here in the videos on the screen. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the current state of the WWE Women's Division.